Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. This is the Sooner fans' guide to the SEC, and today we are looking south to Oxford, Mississippi. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, we got Jamison Maxwell, we got Ty Lee, and look, this one's going to be an interesting one because Jamison, you and I are actually going to this one together. We're really looking forward to our trip. And Ty, as some might know, lived in Mississippi. So for a lot of this show, we're kind of going to be just dishing to Ty because he looked into it for us. He has a couple spots he's looked into. He knows the area decently well, so we're excited to learn about that. But before we dive in, Ty, growing up around Ole Miss and the Mississippi fandom, what is it like? What should we know about Ole Miss fans that Jamison and I might not know?
Yeah, so I will say, one, this is a tremendous flex within Mississippi and very niche circles. But I am, in fact, have never lived anywhere near Oxford. I lived in Madison. That's a very important distinction. But yeah, look, Ole Miss and its fan base they are an extremely proud fan base. They're an extremely hospitable fan base, especially for visiting fans. They have a lot to be proud of. They have a lot that they're delusional of. We'll get to that here in a second when we talk about the Walk of Champions. Champions of what exactly? We do not know. But yeah, it's just steeped in tradition and pride. And for anyone that's going, you will see it. It's just everything. You're surrounded by trees that are older than the United States. Obviously, a ton of history at the university, both positive and negative. And but with the football program, it is all about pride. It's a team that I think really embodies that. It just means more thing in the SEC way. You don't get people as a group. You don't get people barking at you like Georgia fans. You don't get whatever Tennessee fans do. You don't get maybe the pure insanity of LSU. It really is the stereotypical SEC experience. And I'm super excited to dive into it a little bit more.
I am thrilled to dive into it as well. Before we do so, Jamison, what is your general impression of Ole Miss fans kind of from afar? OU hasn't played them much at all, really only one game in football and a championship game in baseball. So not a ton of intersection there, but from a distance, what do you think of Ole? When you think of Ole Miss, what do you think about?
I just think of this secluded college town that with a bunch of preppy people in it. That's just my what I think of whenever I think of Ole Miss. So you're going to go in there, and is it just going to be like this place that you had to drive an hour and a half from Memphis to get? And then all of a sudden you're in this brand new world, and you're going to walk in like, what the hell did I just walk into? And it's just going to have a weird feeling to it. But I'm kind of excited to feel that.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I kind of got a little bit of a vibe for Ole Miss fans at the College World Series a couple years ago. And they were, I will say, pretty friendly. They were really rowdy. They have their whole little, they have a little chant going and everything. Like they're a vocal, fun, exciting fan base that I'm excited to get to see up close. Last time I saw them, they completely overwhelmed OU fans. Asked me if we liked baseball or not. It was different. So having some OU fans come in and kind of even the score a little bit, will be pretty fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing that side of Oxford for sure. Well, Ty, let's dive into it. So just general logistics, it's kind of tricky to get to, but not actually that tricky when you look at, overall other SEC spots. I felt like it was less tricky than I thought it would be, especially after talking about Auburn. From Norman to Oxford, it's 7 hours, 48 minutes, which is really not that bad compared to the 12. I believe this is the second shortest drive outside of Texas. This in Columbia are about kind of similar. So it's really not that far out, is it?
No, when I went to OU, I would drive pretty regularly back to my family's, again, different part of Mississippi, a different route. But yeah, that sub 8 hours, I think is very tenable, especially if you're getting a crew together. to go. Maybe you can split up driving responsibilities or something like that. It's definitely something when we talk about the logistics of it, need to get on it now, probably already past the time for that. Because again, you're talking about if you're driving in, it's not a big town. It's not like Auburn, but it's especially if we got a lot of OU fans coming. And again, I think you guys mentioned this in an earlier podcast in this series, but we're just kind of assuming Oklahoma City Metro for this travel. So adjust as needed for Tulsa, Dallas, and everything else. Obviously coming up from Dallas, a little bit longer of a track. But, you might not necessarily have accommodation accessible either. It's, again, small town. Lots and lots of Ole Miss fans will come up. Obviously, day trip from within Mississippi as well. But with these new teams coming in, with OU coming into the SEC, this is one where you might find yourself having to stay in some pretty rural Mississippi town, having to drive in 30, 40 minutes into Oxford as well. So that's certainly something to factor in on the driving in, the flying side. But yeah, driving side, I don't think too challenging whatsoever. Definitely driving through some sparsely populated areas, though.
Yeah, and we've kind of already talked about it. There is an option if you really want to cut down your drive a little bit and staying in those more rural towns. And I'm sure they've got little Holiday Inns or just decent hotels around that. But all the ones in Oxford are booked. The Airbnbs are just absolutely brutal. Don't even try to look at any place in Oxford right now. What seems like the best move, and what Bobby and I are doing, is we're going to stay in Memphis the night before. And to where it pegs a logistical issue is this is either going to be an 11 a.m. or a 12 p.m. game. This is all central time as well for people trying to figure things out. And the drive from Memphis is about an hour and a half. So if you want to get the full pregame experience of why you would go to Ole Miss, you need to wake up pretty significantly early that Saturday morning to get in and make that drive. And don't think that hour and a half is actually going to be an hour and a half from Memphis, because I'm sure that you're going to hit a lot of traffic.
Yeah, especially on a game day coming down from Memphis, you will find as you get closer, again, we're talking about way out in the sticks of Mississippi here, you will find some traffic on the highways coming in. It's, I'm not super sold on it logistically. Again, we've talked about some other locations, or will talk about in the future, depending on when you're listening to this pod, some other locations that are maybe a bit more challenging to get into. But yeah, it's one of those things I think Jamison said earlier on, maybe some sketchier stuff in terms of actually getting there. But then once you're there, whole different world. It really is a very interesting experience.
Yeah. And I will say the Memphis option really isn't that bad. It's only 6 hours, 33 minutes from the OKC area to Memphis itself. And then you tack on an hour 22 to get to Oxford itself. So yeah, you have to wake up early, but essentially just if you think about it, just a trip down the Turner Turnpike in terms of time. So
I think what's really important to note here for people deciding to go to this game, if they've not already made their plans, is, there will be people that are not big drivers, and they're going to be like 6 hours and 22 minutes. I really don't want to do that. I'd rather fly into Memphis. Flying into Memphis, do they have direct flights, Bobby, for that? Or is that so they have direct?
I believe so. I believe the three. I believe they do have a couple directs.
And I'm sure they're just ballooned up in price at this point. Let me look at it. But the thing is with it, you maybe want to fly in just for your sake, but then you're going to have to also get a rental car if you're going to be staying in Memphis. There's still a lot of logistical issues here where it might just be easier for you in the long run to have your car with you and take that drive from OKC to Memphis.
Yeah, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's in that range where, I mean, if you're flying to Memphis, if you're going to go see the Memphis Tigers at the Liberty Bowl, that would be one thing. But no, I just think that adding in the whole car situation, it's just not worth it.
No nonstops to Memphis. So you're going to have to connect. And so if you're flying American, so this is October 25th weekend. So October 25th, if you want to take a flight right now, cheapest option is American. And you got to do a 2 hour, 40-minute layover in Charlotte. So that's going to be 7 hours and 18 total minutes of travel if you're flying. You are not saving time. There's other ones where you can get a little bit less if you have like smaller layovers and not as bad. Like you can do in United and stop in Chicago, or American has one where you stop in DFW. Big picture of this is if you're really not going to be saving too much time at all if you were to fly. So I would highly discourage you from flying at all if you have those means.
I think flying makes sense if you're coming from Dallas, probably. I could be wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're coming from Dallas, this is a completely different story. We're talking just base from Oklahoma. I think that most people should drive.
For sure.
I will say if you are flying, this is one of those weird routes where it does pay. It pays you back to pay attention. When you look at the American flights, some of them are going to be mainline flights on a bigger plane. Some of them are going to be some of the smaller regional jets. Same with United. And then looks like there's maybe some Southwest options as well if you bounce around. So definitely one where you have some options. You will be rewarded if you kind of pay attention to that. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would lean more towards flying if I were going, obviously, if I were coming from Arizona. But if I were going from Oklahoma City, I'd probably still lean a little bit more towards flying. I think it just makes it a little bit more of a seamless experience. So I'll advocate for that.
But how are you going to get to Oxford though? So you're going to rent a car as well. So you're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
Go to the airport.
But you're talking about like, you should stay in Memphis. Anyways, I don't want to leave my personal vehicle in Memphis. So I would rather fly in. I'd rather fly in with a rental car and then drive down to Oxford in the morning. That's not how I would do it. Obviously, I'd stay with my parents and then drive up from central Mississippi. But
you need experience. For the people staying in Memphis, though, I would be remiss not to talk about this hotel, Bobby, that we talked about. We're not going to stay at, but we know some people. I know 1982 said he's staying there. The Peabody. Talk about the Peabody, Bobby.
The Peabody, legendary hotel, known for its duck parade, where they have some ducks who live there, and famously for years, every day they parade them through the lobby. They have a whole little grandmaster guy leading them on, and it's like a deal. It's like a big deal. The big old duck parade at the Peabody. So I don't know. Could be something to look at for that Friday if you're coming in early.
I'm going to get in before Bobby and be like, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to go to the Peabody and just watch the ducks. Come get me.
I feel like we missed an opportunity to play our little duck song here. The good old feeding the ducks.
Oh, man.
That's great. That's great. All right, so we've talked about travel to Oxford, but once you're in Oxford, really what do you do, Ty? So just kind of looking at this, I mean, if you're one of the lucky ones to stay around there, get a Friday night in, I don't know, or even just a full day at Oxford. What would you do? What are some spots to look at from the bar scene and restaurant scene? Because we all know about the Grove, and we'll talk about that. But just in terms of the non-tailgating options, what do the people need to know?
Yeah, so I do have to preface, right? The one thing and the one thing only that your focus should be on, even more than the game, is the Grove. Right, that's going to be the best answer for eats. That's going to be the best answer for drinks. That's going to be the best answer for experience. I would argue really anywhere in the SEC till we get into championship games, perhaps. The other term you need to know, though, is the Square. It's their campus corner equivalent, their sort of bars and shops. And that's really where you're going to want to go. Again, I think we have some different approaches here for an ideal game day. I think especially visiting, right? There's some restaurants that we'll talk about here in a second. A lot of ones that you need to be already getting reservations right now, probably already too late, frankly, for some of these. I haven't checked. Maybe we can check some live. But the reservation scene opens up June, July, and people are booking stuff for the entirety of the season with a lot of places. I'm a big advocate of show up, especially first-time visit to something like this. The people are going to be hospitable. They're going to want to tell you all about their town. Again, so unbelievably proud of this town and of this team and everything else. The best possible thing that you can do is not take the advice of this podcast, is to show up however you get there and just get out, find somewhere to park. Can't really park on campus, but off campus parking, same thing as OU. Find somewhere they're going to charge you, park your car. It's tremendously safe town. And then just start meeting people and see where to go. You need to get to the square and then just see what catches your eye and get talking to people and see where they recommend to go. Chances are they'll probably invite you to come with them if they're not going over to a tailgate scene. If they are, they'll invite you there, but we're focused on the square right now. Same thing for, I would say, the Friday before the game as well, if you're getting in for that and you're staying in Oxford. Other than that, I would definitely recommend, the traditional campus walk. It's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous campus. And the Friday before is going to be the time to do that more so than the game day. You're going to be so focused, so overwhelmed with other things to do. So, yeah, I would show up, and if you have time on that Friday, go walk the campus, go look around, go to the library, things like that are really the things to do. Finish up the night at the square, and then back to your accommodation.
All right, there you go. I kind of like the idea of just kind of letting it ride, and some places kind of aren't like that. So I like that Oxford is that sort of place where you just kind of jump in, 2 feet in, and just immerse yourself in it all.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I, through my limited research on the square, and obviously, like, you can kind of just go around and just see what catches your eye. The people I hear the most talking about as like the most well-known bar there, and obviously people could listen to this and be like, I'm so wrong, but I see the most people talking about the library. It's like a sports bar that also has like music, has like a music hall attached to it. It seems very college bar-esque. So if you're trying to like see music and then like a college bar scene, it seems like the library sports bar is the one to hit. But there's going to be multiple bars around this area that I'm sure won't all of them will be good for a game day experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the square seems like the move if you're not, like if you don't have a move, like go there and you'll find something out for sure. I did see a little pub I like, the Blind Pig Pub.
The
Blind
Pig Pub.
The Blind Pig Pub looks like it has some solid reviews. Looks like it has a good amount of beers, and Ty and I have talked. Well, all of us have talked about, like, you don't want to be that weirdo who goes to like the college bar where everyone's probably underage. The Blind Pig Pub looks like a spot to me, like where you're probably in a good spot where just lots of draft beers, nice place to chill out. Seems casual. So I don't know. I think that could be that. I have my eye on that already, I think.
Yeah. And honestly, again, I'm, as Bobby said, big advocate for certain courses of action there, but it might be the move, if you're clearly an alum, clearly from OU, wear your gear, and you might get into, some adventures as well, just kind of going wherever you I forgot where I was going to go with that, but I don't think there's a wrong move, especially when it comes to the week around a game in a town like Oxford. It's not the same thing everywhere, but here especially, I think it's the most stereotypical SEC college town, in air quotes, however you define that. I guarantee this fits your definition.
Yeah, and I also see for a little bit more calmer environment, probably will still be rowdy on game day. Go to Funky's and drink their Tide Pod daiquiri.
Might have an actual Tide Pod. You never know. That's funny.
That's definitely one that comes up when I talk to people I know that are sort of have recently gone there or go back for game days and stuff. Funky's is definitely one that pops up continually. So that might be the move.
Maybe. All right, let's talk about the Grove a little bit, and specifically, kind of, is there like a Grove etiquette that you need to do? Like, is it really as easy as just entering the Grove and being immersed in it, or do you need to? Is there stuff you need to avoid doing? Is there stuff you need to possibly do to maybe not like to how would you maximize your trip at the Grove, Ty? Yeah,
so here's the thing: you're not going to blend in. It's like these people have like a look about them, and there's some science to this, I suppose, but they all have kind of the same just odd haircut It's like vaguely bowl cut-esque. All the women will be dressed up nice with their hair done beautifully and everything else. But what you want to do, I would say, as an OU fan, is not that OU fans don't dress nice for games, but this is one where maybe you dress up a little bit nicer than you would. Embrace your OU fandom, but get a little more formal with it. I would go with like some cowboy boots, some jeans, maybe like a nice, like an OU branded polo or PFG shirt or collared shirt, button-down shirt, something like that is going to blend in great. It's going to show that you're an OU fan. Obviously, tailor this to the weather, some quarter zips, some sweatshirts as appropriate, but it's not going to be one where you're not going to be out of place if you're going in like a t-shirt or something that says OU on it. But I think you get the most out of it, especially if you're going in your intent should be to go meet, people, explore, see their tailgates, meet people, dine with them, drink with them, play. I'm sorry, it's been a long day of work. Play like yard games, cornhole, and everything else with them, and then go into the game, but experience that Southern hospitality. So I would approach it as you're going somewhere, you're going into their thing that they're extremely proud of. Dress up a little bit. It's still a game day outfit, but maybe a little more formal. Don't go in like khakis and a blazer like you're a fraternity pledge. But it's
no seersucker. You don't go full seersucker.
I mean, you could. You could if it's your thing, but I would definitely embrace your OU fandom and don't be afraid to go ask questions. Like, hey, where should I go? Everything else, and I think there will be an influx of fans. So it's not like everyone is going to be super inviting everyone into every single tailgate, but I don't think anyone is going to get turned away. If you are, just keep going on to the next one. Someone's going to invite you over and want to hear your story, want to hear about what you do, and want to tell you all about Ole Miss. So I would just, I'd dress up nice. I'd maybe stop by the gas station, stop by something else. Obviously, maybe have something to bring, whether it be some cheap champagne or, a case of beer, and find someone that you can make friends with. And they might not be your friends inside the stadium, but outside in the Grove, it is certainly going to be a very accepting environment. Definitely a place that can get muddy depending on the weather. So keep an eye on that as well.
That's big on the boots. You don't want to wear the nice ones. You got to wear the kickers a bit. So,
but here's the big question, Ty, because I feel like a lot of people want to have the Grove experience. Do you just straight up walk in there and just boldly just go up to Ole Miss tailgates and just be like, hey, what's going on? And just see what happens? Or are there spots within the Grove, do you think like you could just go and just chill out? Like what should we do?
So here's the thing, right? It might be hard to comprehend because of OU's not a fault of the fans, but fault of the universities. This is, again, now we're getting into my personal rants on the tailgating stuff. Atrocious logistics and layout of the tailgating environment. Whereas the Grove might not necessarily have more tailgating people than OU does. They just keep everyone in this little 10-acre, beautiful area right by campus, like OU could do if we just put everyone on the north lawns, the north ovals. That's neither here nor there. But it's one of those things where, again, you're going to get the whole spread. You're going to get the fraternities. You're going to get the alumni groups. You're going to get the businesses. You're going to get all those same things that you would expect any other tailgating place. So it's not like you can just walk up to any tailgate, but it's an area that it's hard to describe. If you think of OU's tailgating scene more like a suburban neighborhood where you're going in, everyone is in their own little home, everyone's in their own little circle. It would be weird to just go start knocking on people's doors and asking if you could come in for a drink and to hear about, their favorite college football team. Bobby might invite you in if you did that. We'll link his address below. We'll dox Bobby live on the pod. But it's just more. It's more one of those things where that's sort of the culture. Everyone's flowing. It's all together. It's almost like a tent city. It's almost like you see these, pictures of paintings of maybe the streets of ancient Rome, or maybe even like the more romanticized depictions of like the favelas in Brazil, where everything is all on top of each other. Everyone's there. It's this big party atmosphere. And they're extremely proud of it. They have nothing to prove. They know they have the best tailgating scene, and they want to show you. It's more of, I think that's maybe the best way that I can describe it. They are so confident and proud of what they have, and they should be, that you just show up, get in there, start floating around. People will greet you. People will be asking, how you're enjoying it as an OU fan. Just let it flow naturally. Again, like I said, there's probably going to be a lot of visiting fans. So probably right at the entry points, those tailgates are going to be pretty overwhelmed with people, but you can't go wrong. And again, best case scenario, like we talked about, you showed up the Friday night before or something, you met some people out and they've invited you over to their tailgate. So, it's not, it's hard to describe without experiencing it. It's still ultimately a college football tailgating scene, but I think anyone who's visited, any of the traditional Big 12 schools can kind of attest to a similar experience. You're always going to find those fans, like if you visit an OU game and you run by Bobby's tailgate, there's always some visiting fans that have sort of wandered by, and you just naturally, click with them, and they spend a few hours there hanging out and doing whatever. Sometimes they're really weird, like a lot of the Nebraska fans were, but we're not going to get into that.
We do not need to talk about what they were using to take shots out of. We don't need to bring that up.
I will say this, looking at pictures of the Grove, and I've seen these, but I need to refresh my memory. It looks the way that it's set up and how many people are there. Oklahoma tailgating scene, it seems like this is my area. This is my stake. Grove just seems like there are tents around, but it's not like this is my land and you need permission to be on my land. So it just seems like you just bring your own stuff, and it's almost like going to a giant communal bar patio area where people stake their claims.
Yeah, you just kind of float through it. Yeah,
it's very communist. If you
so will. you just find a place where you're not getting crowded by people, which you will be, but you just find a place to stand. You just bring your drinks with you, and then you just people watch and walk around.
It is very much it's more fair like I guess I would say that's
a good way to put it. Very good way to put it.
Themselves again, the magic of the Grove, the real secret sauce, and I don't think this is at all diminishing it. It's just they take what they have and they put it in a very small space. It's like Disney World does with the forced perspective to make the castles look larger and everything else than they are. It's the same thing. OU could create. It wouldn't have maybe necessarily the charm that you get and the buy-in that you get from just the Grove being how it's been for so long, but you could create a very similar atmosphere at OU if you just, did a little math equation, figured out how many square meters you needed per person, and then, drew up a little area and forced everyone to be in that little area, especially if it was right by Campus Corner, on the North Lawns and on the North Oval. Again, that's neither here nor there. But
as much as I love that space, I will say, looking at the Grove, one of the big benefits there is it's just really close to Hemingway Stadium itself.
It is. It can be. You get it just kind of depends. It's not like a huge stadium. It's not a great stadium. Honestly, it's sort of weirdly put together, but it is at least a 5 minute walk, maybe, if you're really hustling, especially when you get towards game time. You can be talking about 10-15 minutes, and then whatever the lines are, add security, which again greatly vary depending on where you're entering and everything else. One thing we do need to talk about is traditions at the Grove. Like we talked about, there is I alluded to at the start of the pod, the Walk of Champions, which is a big thing at Ole Miss. The home team comes through, and sort of the traditional stadium entry that you see a little bit at OU, but it's more drawn out, and it's this more ceremonial thing at Ole Miss. Of course, now not as accessible as it used to be in terms of your engagement with the fans. It really used to be, if you look at pictures of olden days, they were walking through the Grove. There's this little path, again, called the Walk of Champions, that they walk along, but it used to be, no roped off, no holding people back. It was really the team was walking through the crowd. And it was a really, really cool, still is, tradition of walking through the home environment, walking through the tailgate, absorbing that, and just the adoring fans and everything else. And it is a cool thing to see and to experience. You kind of have to get there by 15 to 30 minutes, depending on, where you want to stand and everything else, to get up front and see the team come through. But it is kind of a neat thing to experience. Again, if you really want to boil it down, all you're seeing is just the home team walk past the tailgating area and into the stadium. But it is it's their thing, and the buy-in that they have for it, the passion that they have for it. Blake is going to hate if he listens to this pod, but Ole Miss really does embody it just means more. It really does. You cannot describe it. And that's why I think, again, this is just kind of an advertisement for why you should go. This whole pod is you have to experience it. It can't really be described. Because again, I describe it in podcast form and video form, and you're like, yeah, that's OU does the same thing. They walk, into the stadium, and fans can kind of stand by the ropes and see them. It's not the same. It doesn't have that magic. It's not. OU is so much more like watching the NBA or NFL players arrive in the stadium. It just doesn't have that college football, that soul and that magic. It's really, maybe that's the big thing about Oxford is you get that soul, like the soul music, like everything else, just the tradition, the culture there is, you feel it in the air with the humidity.
Yeah. And I know like that type of passion, having them walk through the Grove, that area is pretty awesome. Because Oklahoma State has something similar. I feel like a lot of people have kind of taken from that tradition. But the passion I feel like Ole Miss fans have for their program is next level. I mean, I'll never forget after they beat us in that game 2 when they won their first baseball national title. One of the few national titles they've won in anything. Just the amount of people just sobbing around me, just the energy of like just how much that meant to them. Like you could really tell. So I can tell it'll be a passionate fan base, and I certainly am excited for it, to say the least. Any final thoughts on the Grove before we move on to the stadium? Because I feel like we talk about the Grove a lot, but the stadium, maybe not as much.
Yeah. Move on to the stadium, because I need to know about this guy, because I don't know like much about it at all.
Yeah, like I feel like every time we talk about Ole Miss, always about the Grove. Von Hemingway Stadium to me it feels like almost pretty unceremonious compared to the Grove. It's 12th of 16th in capacity in the SEC at only 64,000, which I gotta say, for a 12th, like being ranked 12th and being that large is a breath of fresh air compared to whatever the 12th biggest Big 12 stadium is. That's pretty nice. It's still pretty solid. It's ahead of Missouri, Mississippi State, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. But are there any traditions inside to take note of? I know Ole Miss is, and we won't dive into this for sure, but I know traditions are a weird thing with Ole Miss because they've had to change up a lot of stuff. But are there any traditions that kind of remain or that are notable, like you want to be in your seats for before the game?
Not really that I can recall. Again, you got to soak it up. You never know. They don't necessarily have like the eagle flying through like Auburn and everything else. Really, their thing is the Grove, the tailgate, the never lost a party. It's going to be that rowdy SEC. It means more atmosphere. It's going to be one of those where the fan base and the team is going to be approaching it like, well, I don't want to say like a bowl game because no one cares about bowl games anymore, but it'll be a lot like playing Oklahoma State, I'd say. It's going to be that same atmosphere. And again, the stadium, like you said, not huge, but you have to remember that Ole Miss is not a massive university. We're not talking about, a Big Ten university where they admit 500,000 freshmen every year and then try to claim that they're super elite or something like that. It's not a Penn State situation where they're like less than 500 at home, but they've claimed that they're a tough place to play because they all wear the same colored T-shirt. It's a place, again, full of passion. It's, to Ole Miss's credit, everyone cares very deeply, but they don't necessarily have maybe the deepest pockets as you would think. The stadium will, in some parts, show its age. I don't think they had a single screen in the stadium until like 2000, and just different things like that. So it's one of those things where it is where the magic happens, but it's not necessarily the magical thing. I don't think it has like the charm of the Cotton Bowl and frankly, I almost felt more atmosphere and more uniqueness from Mississippi State Stadium in going, which is weird, to maybe controversial to say. Obviously, it will be controversial within the state of Mississippi, but what you experience there is going to be, again, the Grove and the Square, but the team and the fans. I think you'll see a very interesting shift in the fan base. Again, you're not going to have people. Well, there might be some fights, but you're not going to have people as a whole trying to fight you like LSU or barking at you like Georgia or anything else like that. But once you get in the stadium, it's game time. That Southern hospitality is still there, but the same people that you were chatting with at the Grove that were inviting you to, come back for Thanksgiving dinner and to watch the Egg Bowl with them in person might not be your best friend anymore once you get inside that stadium and once it's game time. So that would really be I don't have a ton of sort of notable, I guess, memories of the stadium. Again, I haven't been to an OU game there, but other than just kind of it's a stadium.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good thing to hear, really, because with this being 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. game, that you feel like that you could get in the nick of time into the stadium and still feel like you're actually getting the experience that you want. Maximize your time in the Grove, maximize your time tailgating, and then get in time for, national anthem kickoff.
Yeah, that's absolutely what when I hear that, that's exactly what I hear. Because again, a lot of their traditions have been wiped for obvious reasons. So you're not going to see something that you have to see in the state of college football because it's not a thing. They're throwing out black bears and sharks, to try to figure out what to do next, and Lane Kiffin's dog. So unless you want to see Juice Kiffin, which I think Juice Kiffin he's roaming the field a bunch of times nowadays. I don't know. Stick around the Grove regardless. That would be the better move. Okay, so we've talked about just the vibe at Ole Miss. Let's talk about the series history, which is minimum. The series is 1-0 Ole Miss. The only meeting was in the 1999 Independence Bowl in Bob Stoops' first ever bowl game, which was also the first bowl game since 1994 for the Sooners, which hard to believe, a 5-year gap between bowl appearances, guys. What a different era of OU football there, with the 90s. I can't even imagine what this podcast would have been like during that time.
Boring. Very boring.
I can imagine too. Bobby would be on here defending every bum quarterback that we had and explaining that they're just a victim of some sort of weird circumstance and that they're not at all that bad. Reminder to everyone listening to the podcast that no OU quarterback, even in the dark days of the 90s, had a worse win-loss record than Dylan Gabriel did. He had the worst one since the 60s. Bobby wants to gloss over. That's a fact.
Well, okay, so partially some of it is because you actually had him in place for a long period of time. You weren't just rotating him out, because there was a period of time where OU went 2 actual years without a home win. Like 365 days, and then you add another 365 days, 2 actual years. So I don't know. There were worse times than the Dylan Gabriel era. I will not stand for it. This is neither here nor there.
There were worse times doesn't make it good. Anyways,
significantly worse.
Refocus.
Please tell us about that 1999 game.
Yeah, so it featured an 80-yard touchdown from Deuce McAllister. Remember that name, Jamison?
Of course.
That's a throwback.
Great. New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, great Saint right there. And OU ended up losing on a walk-off field goal. But hey, the next year they won the national title, so not too bad. So looking at this, what's the beef level of 1 to 10? This is non-existent beef. I would say maybe 2, just because of the recent history of the College World Series, but I don't think anyone's actually.
But is that beef though? Where we could talk about it, and it might be just a conversation starter. I'm sad we didn't win. I'm not mad at Ole Miss, but for the people that went to the game, Bobby, I'll say that's different. But for the majority of OU fans, I don't think who went to the game.
Yeah,
because I know a lot of people said the Ole Miss fans were they were very competitive with them there.
Yeah, but they weren't bad. So like, I mean, I don't want to give it a 1 because a 1 is like amicable, like perfectly fine. Nothing. They've never done me wrong. You know, it's so I'm putting out like
Okay. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
it's like a 1 is like is basically nothing. A 2 is like there's like maybe a little trimmer, little trickle. Not quite
Here's
beef, not even remotely close to beef.
here's what you'll have to understand about Ole Miss's fan base. One, the top like 5% of hardcore OU baseball fans are as hardcore baseball fans as like the average Ole Miss fan. Baseball means a lot in that state at Mississippi State and at Ole Miss. They are as a whole. Like you ask the average OU fan about OU baseball, and they remember, oh yeah, Kyler Murray was on the baseball team. That's kind of cool. Or like, oh yeah, like baseball team's pretty good, but the softball team is crazy. At Ole Miss, the average Ole Miss fan knows and cares deeply about Ole Miss baseball. And again, same thing for football. I've never seen a fan base more proud than when I lived in Mississippi, and even the years after. The year that Ole Miss beat Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer in the Florida Gators, that was infamous win by Ole Miss, infamous game. That fan base to this day, it's not a like rub it in like, oh, we beat you. It's not like when Oklahoma State beats OU and they try to like hold it. Like it's genuine like pride in that accomplishment. They talk about games like that, like talking about their grandson being the first person in their family to graduate from college, like that kind of pride in the game. So I think that there is something to understand with Ole Miss fans is they're also tremendously proud of the SEC and what that conference has been and what that conference is. They're tremendously proud of how they kind of punch above their weight and draft picks, especially when you look at championships and everything else. I think you'll find that in a very polite way, there probably is a feeling that they help build what the SEC is now. And we've kind of come in as these out-of-towners. We're the Californians coming into the Texas real estate market here, I think, in their mind. And we're coming in and we're saying, well, we have a ton of championships. We have a ton of Heisman winners. We have a ton of, blah, blah, blah. We're in an easier conference. That's why we moved. Here we are now. Here's our bowl record against you guys. Here's our regular season record against you guys. Here's our Heismans. Here's our national championships. Here's our conference championships. What do you mean walk of champions? We have more national championships than you have conference and nationals combined. But I think to Ole Miss fans, they're the ones who were like, hey, we've born and raised here. We might not be the best off, but you guys can't just come in and throw down $500,000 above asking on an average house, kind of. Not to delve too much into my Dallas real estate market bit that I always do. But yeah, I think there is a vibe of that. And whether there's animosity there or not, they're going to be looking to say, hey, this is the SEC. This is not, you're not coming in and you're not going to come into our house and beat us at football. Like they want to prove that it does mean more. They want to prove that, I would argue very, very, very exceedingly average SEC team, especially if you run the clock back, is better than the top of the upper crust of other conferences. I think they genuinely believe that, and I think they expect to come in and embarrass us. I think they expect most people that play us to embarrass us, but I think that they think, at least in their own minds, that this is a tremendously challenging place to play and that they're a tremendously hardcore team, whether that's marketing or whether that's anything else. Again, they have a failed USC coach leading the way, so I'm not necessarily sure how much of that is true and how much of that is marketing. They have a failed USC quarterback even. So I'd say we're practically playing the Chicago Bears at this point, but I think they truly think that they're the Chicago Bears and they're an NFL caliber team. So I think there will be maybe not animosity, but there will be more passion there, I think, than OU fans expect. It's not going to be a friendly.
Right. And I think there's a lot of if I was an Ole Miss fan, where Ole Miss was in the pecking order of things with the SEC is they have been to some really low places, especially after everything that happened with Hugh Freeze. That, they've kind of crawled their way back up to like being this close to the upper part of the SEC, with the Alabamas, the Georgias. They've made some nice, BCS New Year's Six bowls, but an OU who is, just flat out of blue blood, one of the best programs in college football, and Texas also coming in. I would imagine that it has to be like, there has to be a little bit of fear that you're about to get jumped in line in the pecking order of the SEC. And I imagine there's a little bit of frustration that it's like, we've been here grinding it out, and these two carpetbaggers think that they can just come in and take our spot. So I imagine, like, for a tier like the Ole Misses, there has to be like probably a little trepidation towards Oklahoma and Texas. And I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see play out.
And I think this is a good segue into like obviously we're talking about this way beforehand. This is,
sure.
We've got 4 months to go as the time we're recording this, but this is going to be a game that is in late October. That's going to be very serious in terms of college football playoff and implications within the 12-team playoff. And I think that whoever wins this game is going to at least have a pretty good chance, unless something crazy happens on either side, of fighting their way into the playoffs. And Ole Miss, this is a team where they are putting a lot of chips in to make sure that they can be in a position to be in a college football playoff. They went crazy in the transfer portal. And obviously, whenever you have Jackson Dart as a returner at the quarterback position, who's an extremely skilled quarterback, you've got to kind of put in all of your chips. On the defensive side, getting Walter Nolan from Texas to A&M in the transfer portal, like former number 1 overall player in the country. We talked about Princely Umanmielen a lot from Florida as like an edge rusher that we really wanted, who ended up going to Ole Miss. Chris Paul Jr., middle linebacker from Arkansas. Like, they really did well at getting some big-time skilled players on their defense. Will it all come together? TBD. But this team is extremely skilled, and there's a reason that DraftKings already has them at Ole Miss -6 versus Oklahoma in this game. We're going to come in as a clear underdog, but it will be still that point where it's going to be very hectic in a game that could go away where Oklahoma could squeeze out an upset.
Well, I wouldn't say clear underdog yet.
What do you mean? Ole Miss -6? That is a clear underdog.
Right now, but at that point in the season, both OU and Ole Miss could look very differently. Our outlooks on.
So let's break down Ole Miss's schedule beforehand, and I'll tell you why I'm not really nervous at all of how they're going to be coming into this. So
I'm just saying, Jamison, if OU beats Texas and is undefeated going into Oxford, they're not going to be underdogs.
Dude, we're 4 months into the season. We've just
I doubt that, Bobby. I think we'd still be underdogs even if we beat Texas.
Undefeated OU after beating Texas.
That's an absurd.
Because Ole Miss will probably, if they beat LSU and they come out, so they play LSU October 12th, then have bye, and then they play us. If they beat LSU in Baton Rouge, or even if they drop that game and they play well, I still think that they would give the -1.5 to Ole Miss on that one.
That's insanity.
It's home field advantage is a big deal.
But you're talking about if OU comes in with a win against Tennessee that gets hyped up for God knows why Tennessee gets hyped, and a win neutral site against Texas, who is expected to be in the top 4 or 5 perennially this year. I don't see how you can have.
But Ole Miss is still going to have hype too,
right?
But
it's not the same, because you're talking about if OU to go undefeated, that means that Jackson Arnold has to be pretty legit, which by the nature of him being an Oklahoma quarterback will put him in the Heisman conversation in a way that is Dart still going to be the quarterback at Ole Miss? His 7th season. Absolutely. Dart is not going to get the same hype that Jackson Arnold is going to get.
I don't know. I think Dart could get some big hype. And they lost Jonathan Mingo last year. I understand, but still, this is a guy who's extremely skilled and is a lot more proven, and their schedule is significantly easier than ours coming into the game, with LSU really being their only opponent that I'd be kind of worried about. They get Kentucky at home to start SEC, and then they go on the road to South Carolina, then go in Baton Rouge, which is going to be a very, very tough game. Then they get their bye. So in terms of just what we're going to see whenever we get a hold of Ole Miss, unless they get upset, they're either going to be a 1-loss team or undefeated.
it's going to be a massive, massive ball game, to say the least. I agree with you there, Jamison. I wouldn't say it a lock. It's a lock that will be like solid dogs, but right now, like, yeah, 6 points is as big of a dog as OU usually is, historically. So I think it's going to be a massive game. I'm very intrigued to see how Ole Miss looks. I mean, we won't really get to see them do much until that LSU game. I'm not really huge on Kentucky this year. But I know if it's Mark Stoops, but
I'm swinging for the fences with this one. Kentucky might not be in the playoffs this year, guys.
But no, I mean, this is going to be a pretty massive game, to say the least.
Isn't Brock Vandegrift in Kentucky now?
Is he? Oh my
God!
I think
I'm trying to remember. Is Devin Leary still the quarterback for Kentucky?
Yeah. Vandegrift's at
oh no, Devin Leary's gone. He got drafted. So, oh man, this Vandegrift time. I don't know what Kentucky's depth chart is. I have no idea. This is also June that we're talking about it. But still, like, it's going to be, they lost, what was it? Ray Davis was their running back, was an absolute superstar for them. So yeah, if you look on the ourlads.com, they have Brock Vandegrift as their number one on the depth chart. So, oh my goodness, that team will be an interesting one to watch, and you never know with Kentucky. But the big picture is I would be extremely surprised if Ole Miss has more than one loss coming into this game. And no matter what Oklahoma does, I just don't see a scenario unless we blow out Texas and Tennessee that we'd be favorites. That's just my opinion.
I think that's fair. And I will say, I think the 11 a.m. kick or early kick does help a bit. This is probably Ole Miss's biggest game, home game. No, they have Georgia. Never mind. One of the two biggest games. Well, they also have the Egg Bowl too.
It is one of the games.
One of three games that mean a lot to Ole Miss, because again, they do have the egg. So yeah, it'll be a big. It's their first big home game though. So I think getting that one early, giving them less time to get liquored up and going, I think that'll help the environment a bit. But I don't know. Right now, if I had to project it, I'd probably project this as an OU loss at the moment, just given too much. There's a lot to learn, and I think it's one in the like 12-team era. It would be I think relatively acceptable loss, all things considered. But I know that's an insane sentence, and I hope that didn't make Ty's brain explode hearing OU an acceptable loss in the same sentence. But I don't know.
We have a quality loss mention banner that we can put on the podcast.
Let's not go back into this whole Bobby's definitions of what is and isn't a successful season, because
we have plenty of time. We have plenty of time to talk about that this offseason. Quality loss mention. It's a pre-quality loss mention.
I do want to turn it back a little bit, back to Oxford as we kind of wrap up here. Again, we mentioned some of the bars, Funky's, again, my vote there, but some of the restaurants you got to maybe consider if you can get into. There's a place called Ajax Diner that's great. There's a Nuke's Eatery. It's kind of a local chain. Nuke's is one of my favorites, sort of deli, one that you can get stuff to go at, again, local-ish chain. So somewhere where you can get in and out a little bit better if things are maybe filling up a little bit more. I'm not sure if it's still open. There's a place called Beagle Bagel, same thing, local chain, amazing chicken salad and bagels for a little lunch, or whether you're trying to get maybe some breakfast or something before. I'm trying to go down my list here and make sure I mentioned everything. But yeah, there's, again, tons and tons of places. Don't get bogged down and have to hit a McDonald's or anything like that.
I am all in on a place named Beagle Bagel, by the way. That sounds.
My wife and I love Beagle Bagel. We go there all the time when we're in Mississippi. You can get a tub of potato salad, maybe for staying at a hotel or something. It might be a move. Go get you a tub of potato salad.
I have to sit in the same room as Bobby.
I don't know why
we can just take a spoon to the dome of potato salad.
Have I been saying potato salad this whole time?
I'm not a potato salad guy though.
Chicken salad. Again,
still,
I'm not a
does
chicken
not
salad
matter.
guy either.
I've been having a long day at work. Chicken salad that you put on the bagels. If I've been saying potato salad this
No,
whole
you said
time,
chicken salad the
my
first
bad.
time, but then you switched
I'm
to
heartbroken
potato.
Go get
to
you a
inform you
tub
that
of chicken
I've been
salad.
the Beagle Bagel in Oxford is closed, which is
Oh,
they have them in Jackson and Madison though, so they do exist. They're just not in Oxford, sadly.
Okay, well, that's a little out of the ways. Forget what I said about Beagle Bagel. It is off the menu. Go get you some nukes.
Just hit up some local for sure. So, all right, guys, I think that's just about all we got for this edition of the Sooners Guide to the SEC. But look, this continues on. This guide is not complete without input from those who know Ole Miss well. And if you have a good recommendation, put it down in the comments below. We would love to see that. Help out your fellow Sooner, help out the Sooner fans, Ole Miss fans. If you're coming across this video, this is a good time to kind of flex your Southern hospitality. Let us know what to go check out. So make sure to comment, and while you're down there, give it a like as well. Helps our show grow, helps us keep doing this, and we greatly appreciate it. And of course, if you're a Soon fan, subscribe. We're gonna be doing this all season long, all off season long, just ramping up, doing more of this. So a lot of really good stuff coming down the pipeline. But yeah, that's our show. We'll see you next time as we continue to look at OU's away locations, and just get excited for the season. It's coming up soon, y'all. Couldn't be more excited. So, all right. Well, for me, Jamison, and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod, the Sooner Guide to the SEC. We'll see y'all next time. Have a good one, everyone, and Boomer Sooner, everybody.